Jeffrey Mitchell had always dreamed of serving and protecting his community. On March 26, 2000, that dream became a reality when he pinned on his badge and officially joined the police force in Sacramento, California. But no one could have predicted how his story would end, a routine shift that took a sudden, dark turn, leading to questions that, even today, remain unanswered. What happened to Deputy Jeffrey Mitchell, and why is this cold case still unsolved? Let's investigate and see what we can discover together. Welcome to episode 110, The Unsolved Murder of Deputy Jeffrey Mitchell. In the early hours of Friday, October 27, 2006, the roads of rural Sacramento County were eerily quiet. The vast open land stretched out in every direction. Deputy Jeffrey Mitchell was on routine patrol that evening, keeping the streets of Sacramento County safe, when he came upon the quiet intersection of Dillard and Mice Roads, just off rural Highway 16. The clock in his cruiser read 3:27 a.m. when something unusual caught his eye. A white Chevrolet van, idling in the darkness, without any license plates. It wasn't all that uncommon for Deputy Mitchell to encounter strange vehicles on these rural backroads from time to time, but something about this one seemed different. The van was out of place and in a part of the county where few ventured at this hour of the night. From his patrol vehicle's computer, Deputy Mitchell calmly contacted Sheriff's Dispatch, noting that the vehicle appeared to have a single occupant, and for the moment, everything seemed okay. The dispatcher acknowledged the message. All seemed normal, just another routine encounter on his patrol. Until just 7 minutes later, a strange and unusual sound came over the radio, a series of clicks, static, and silence. No words at all. Dispatch, sensing something was off, tried calling Deputy Mitchell's radio, but no response, just silence. Dispatch then dialed his cell phone, thinking there may be a radio malfunction, but, again, nothing. With no response from Deputy Mitchell, the dispatcher had no choice but to make the call no one ever wants to make, issuing a Code 3 alert, lights, sirens. All units were ordered to head to Deputy Mitchell's last known location immediately. What had started as a routine stop was now a potential emergency, with Deputy Jeffrey Mitchell's fate hanging in the balance. Without knowing the situation at the scene, time was slipping away, and every second mattered. The first deputy arrived on the scene at exactly 3:27 a.m. The flashing lights cut through the darkness, illuminating a horrible sight. Deputy Jeffrey Mitchell lay motionless on the cold asphalt by the rear bumper of his own patrol car. It was a terrible scene. Jeffrey Mitchell, a devoted officer, a loving husband, and incredible father, now laid on the road, lifeless. He had been shot, execution style, with his own service weapon. The quiet rural road had become the setting for an unthinkable tragedy. Deputy Jeffrey Mitchell was just 38 years old when his life was brutally taken on that October night in 2006. A short time later, his wife, Crystal Mitchell, was jolted awake by the sound of loud, frantic knocking at her front door. She rushed to the door, her heart pounding, only to be met by a group of police officers. Crystal could see that their faces were pale and full of grief. Among them stood the department chaplain, and in that moment, Crystal's world was shattered. Before a single word could be spoken, she understood what had happened. A scream tore from her throat, filling the silence of the night as the devastating truth hit her. Her beloved husband was gone. As officers rushed Crystal to the hospital to say her final goodbye, the world outside seemed to blur. Electronic highway signs flashed ominously overhead. Officer shot, white Chevy van, no plate. Each sign a reminder of the nightmare unfolding in real time. Unfortunately, when they arrived at the hospital, it was too late. At 4:45 a.m., Deputy Jeffrey Mitchell was declared deceased. Grief weighed heavy as they handed Crystal the badge her husband had worn on his last patrol. As she turned it over, something caught her eye. Laminated on the back was a small photo of her and their 6-year-old son, Jake, carefully placed inside. A silent reminder of the family he cherished, placed right by his heart on every shift. The manhunt was on for the white Chevy van that Deputy Mitchell reported encountering before his tragic murder, and it was massive. Law enforcement swarmed the area, determined to catch whoever had committed such a heinous act. Evidence at the scene revealed signs of a violent struggle, painting a picture of desperation and chaos. "This may be a hunch and we may never have the answer," then Sacramento County Sheriff John McGinnis told reporters. "But it is my belief that something heightened his response because it looks like he had begun to handcuff a suspect." In that moment, Deputy Mitchell found himself in a fight for his life. Struggling to maintain control of his service weapon, he ultimately lost his grip. In the blink of an eye, the suspect seized the opportunity, shooting Mitchell once in the head before getting back into the van and vanishing into the night. Investigators held on to hope that finding the van would lead them to the killer. But just 12 hours after Deputy Mitchell's death, the van was located, but the mystery only deepened. The van was discovered half submerged in the Cosumnes River. Inside the van were the lifeless bodies of Alan E. Schubert, 43, and Nicole Ann Welch, 28. Both had died due to carbon monoxide poisoning. Detectives pieced together a timeline of the events, and assuming the driver had obeyed the speed limit, it would have taken about 27 minutes to reach the location in the river from where Deputy Mitchell found the van on the night he was killed. The evidence suggested they had driven straight to the river after murdering Deputy Mitchell, perhaps in a frantic attempt to get rid of the van and erase any traces of their involvement in the crime. Initially, detectives were certain that either Alan Schubert or Nicole Welch, or perhaps both, had a hand in Deputy Mitchell's murder. But as the investigation progressed, they found that neither showed signs of trauma. There were no visible wounds, despite the violent struggle that had seemingly taken place. The implication was chilling. Schubert and Welch were almost certainly dead in that van before Deputy Jeffrey Mitchell even encountered his murderer on that October night. "My hope and belief was that we'd find some trauma, indicating that Schubert fought with our deputy, but there was none," Sheriff McGinnis confessed. It seemed like the more they uncovered about the victims in the van, the more questions surfaced. Alan Schubert was not a stranger to police. Over the previous decade, he had racked up a troubling history of charges: vandalism, DUI, and drug possession, to name a few. Family members noted that he hadn't driven with a valid license in at least 10 years. However, they insisted he wasn't prone to violent crime. His mother, Carolyn Rogers, emphasized that Schubert had always accepted the consequences of his actions. On the day he died, Schubert had been using his van as a makeshift home and workplace, taking his friend Nicole Welch to visit her friends. He didn't plan on being gone for very long, with an upcoming court appearance in Sacramento looming over him. When questioned about the possibility that Schubert might have taken his own life, his girlfriend said that wasn't even a remote possibility. They had plans to move in together, a future they were both excited about. So with the two victims now ruled out as suspects for the murder, authorities began to close in on the most logical place for their suspect to live: the small town of Wilton, the nearest community to the murder. With a population of just 4,500, almost everyone became a suspect, and the atmosphere in Wilton grew tense. A web of connections and suspicions began to weave tightly around the town, leaving investigators to wonder who could be hiding in plain sight. "A lot of people are getting paranoid that the suspect is here in town. He's one of us, and we're rubbing elbows with him. That's kind of a spooky thought," said local resident Johnny Shackelford, capturing the unsettling atmosphere that had settled over the small town of Wilton. As deputies canvassed the area, they knocked on doors and conducted interviews, even returning to one particular man's residence 4 separate times. Each visit brought renewed hope they'd find the killer, as they collected DNA samples to compare with evidence gathered from the crime scene. But despite their efforts, no arrests were made. Year after year, leads dwindled, and the question of who had killed Deputy Mitchell lingered. In 2020, the sheriff's office reignited its public plea for information, a renewed effort to uncover the truth after 14 long years. "We have made a lot of strides," Detective Tony Turnbull said. "To say there are no suspects or persons of interest would be lying to you. We've looked at people strongly, and they have not been ruled out yet." Despite this glimmer of hope, shadows of doubt still linger over the case. The quest for justice has remained frustratingly out of reach. For those with any information regarding the tragic deaths of Alan Schubert, Nicole Welch, and Deputy Jeffrey Mitchell, the call to action remains. Each piece of information could be the key to unlocking the truth behind this haunting case. Tips can be submitted via the Sheriff's Office website, sacsheriff.com, or by calling 916-874-TIPS. You can remain 100% anonymous when providing your tips, and call takers are available to take your tips 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The unsolved murder of Deputy Jeffrey Mitchell, along with the deaths of Alan Schubert and Nicole Welch, remains an open wound in the community of Wilton and the larger Sacramento County area. With each year that passes, the details of that fateful October night in 2006 echo in the hearts and minds of those left behind. As investigators continue to seek answers, the hope remains that someone will come forward, shedding light on a case that has haunted so many. Until then, uncertainty looms, a haunting presence that binds this small community together in their search for justice for Deputy Jeffrey Mitchell. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Fireside Unsolved. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Fireside. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Fireside Unsolved. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to help the channel grow. Until next time, take it easy and be easy, you filthy bastards.